For as long as people have inhabited North America, there have been countless reported sightings of a black panther. Up until this very day, there are hundreds of reports every year in just the United States alone, which will be the focus of this video. Some photos and videos are posted online, and no matter which state you live in, you're likely to be able to find a few people in your community who will swear up and down that they have without a doubt seen one themselves. And yet, according to scientists, this absolutely cannot be true. Scientists and zoologists maintain that a true black panther, as people are reporting them, are a physical impossibility or at best a 1 in a million chance. So what are so many people seeing then? Why can't they exist? And what exactly is the definition of these black panthers? You may very well be thinking, of course black panthers are real, I've seen them on TV or in a zoo before, and yes, you'd be right. The term black panther is a broad generalized term of any melanistic large cat species, but specifically a leopard or jaguar. Although occurring very rarely in tigers and other cats, it is more common to happen in leopards and jaguars. But when people say they are seeing a black panther in terms of it being a cryptid that science says can't exist, what they are specifically referring to is a melanistic mountain lion, also called cougars, pumas, or simply just panthers. A black mountain lion is just about the most mundane and commonly reported cryptid you'll ever hear of, but people will fight over whether it's real or not all day long. First, let's take a quick look at melanism in animals to get a better understanding of it. Melanism occurs in a wide variety of species in the animal kingdom. As the opposite of albinism, it is also caused by certain genes reacting, which can result in a true solid black coloring or as patches, spots, or stripes. Big cats with melanism still have their patterns on their fur, which can sometimes still be made out in very bright lighting. It is certainly strange a huge amount of animals, including large cats, are able to be melanistic, just not mountain lions. Bobcats can very rarely be black, and they are considered a genetic anomaly to be so. An article from 2016 stated that only around 10 have ever been documented officially, and unfortunately most of these animals were killed by trophy hunters. In fact, albino, melanistic, and piebald variants of animals, when rare to find, are targeted and killed by hunters and poachers, often illegally. This of course only increases the rarity of these beautiful animals. Something vital to consider is that only very recently was the first ever documented links to display melanism confirmed by researchers, showing that not only is it still possible for there to be unlikely creatures hidden away in the wild, but that, quite frankly, scientists don't always know everything. One has to wonder if anyone but a researcher had taken this recording, if the science community would have acknowledged it seriously at all. And at that, would the day before seeing the proof for themselves, would they have said it was a genetic anomaly or totally impossible? Sound familiar? Mountain lions themselves are known to, and again very rarely, be albino or leucistic, which is the complete lack of pigment or white with some pigment. So why exactly can a mountain lion not be black, or at least just a dark coat? Well, according to modern-day science, mountain lions simply lack the specific gene that creates black fur, and in order to exist, an animal would have to be born with an extremely rare spontaneous mutation that would be difficult to pass on to offspring. So then, with all that in mind, what are people seeing and reporting all over the country and beyond? If you look at black panthers, you're mostly going to see jaguars or leopards, but there will also be many pictures and videos of what people claim is a genuine black panther. While researching this video, I came across a huge amount of very obvious fakes and hoaxes. There are any number of dyed taxidermy cougars posing as the legendary big black cat, lots of AI or photoshopped images of black jaguars superimposed on trail camera footage, and more than anything, there are simple misidentifications. Bobcats, lynx, dogs, even domestic house cats, causing some confusion in online forums. It's been proven time and again that humans are just a terrible judge of size and distance, and it's not far-fetched that a person unfamiliar with wildlife might spot a bobcat or even a domestic cat or dog at a distance and mistake it for a mountain lion. Mistaking an actual big cat with someone's pet might seem like a stretch, but in recent years, domesticated but feral populations of cats have been growing both in number and in physical size, with some specimens reaching 35 pounds, which is right up there with the average weight range of a bobcat or even lynx. It also has to be said that the time of day a sighting happens may significantly affect what they think they see. A glimpse of a bobcat crossing the road at night in the headlights might look no different than a medium-sized dog to some people. Or a regular colored mountain lion, it may seem darker or even black in poor lighting. But with all that said, many of these reported sightings are happening in broad daylight and not even at a great distance. So how can that be explained? As just a single example of this, the way that I personally knew about Black Panthers is from my own parents, who, since I was a kid, always talked about how in the early 1990s in southern Indiana, on a snowy day, they were in their car and topped a hill, and lo and behold, a black mountain lion was in the middle of the road. They said that it watched the truck for a moment before rising and slowly walking away into the woods. This happened in the daytime, with the vehicle being close to the animal and with no shadows or objects obstructing their view. What's more is that there were multiple witnesses to this in the vehicle that all agreed it was very dark or black in color, and these were all outdoorsy type people that were familiar with the local wildlife. They wouldn't mistake a mountain lion for a bobcat or a dog or a domestic cat. I absolutely know that. Imagine our surprise when nearly 2 decades later we hear on TV that a black mountain lion can't exist. And yet, this has been the experience of quite a lot of people across North America who have seen a Black Panther themselves or know someone who has. It could be argued that some people are making it up for attention, of course, but the problem with that is that too many of these people have no idea until you tell them that a Black Panther is a cryptid at all. Many of these sightings and stories aren't sensationalized at all and are just told in passing as a matter of fact, because to them that's exactly what it is, a fact. The sightings of big black cats have been occurring in the United States since the moment settlers set foot here, and native tribes have their own tales of them as well. They aren't talked about like Bigfoots or werewolves or some other cryptid, but just like any other animal. And again, many of these people reporting them are avid outdoorsy people and hunters, familiar with wildlife and not particularly likely to mistake them for something else or misjudge their size. While researching the subject, I found that at least half of the public opinion seems to lead towards their being real, with a lot of the comments suggesting that anyone who thinks otherwise is ignorant or hasn't spent enough time outdoors for doing field research. It isn't just the size and color that people use to insist they saw a mountain lion, but also the build and shape of the animal they saw. A bobcat and lynx have entirely different shapes and builds than that of a mountain lion, other than just notable size differences. Although their coloring is within the same range, their fur patterns are distinct from mountain lions. And of course, the ears and tails are all hugely different and very unmistakable. Next, there's the common argument that the black panthers being seen aren't mountain lions at all, but actual black jaguars or black leopards. The glaring problem with this is, of course, that the habitats don't align. Leopards are native only to Africa and some parts of Asia, and jaguars, although yes, native to both South and North America, are not exactly expected to have set up shop in the northeastern United States, where a lot of the Black Panther sightings take place. Historically, jaguars had a much more diverse territory range than they do in modern day, although thankfully they are making a comeback in Mexico and the southwest United States. In these areas and ranges, and perhaps even somewhat outside these ranges, it would be within reason to assume that some of the Black Panther sightings happening in America are actually a black jaguar. But that doesn't explain the many endless reports in the eastern United States where the majority of Black Panther sightings take place. Could they be escaped zoo animals or released pets? Maybe, but there would have to be a huge amount of reckless zoos and private owners that just so happen to be losing their very rare, expensive, and endangered exotic pets to account for even a small fraction of reports. Another element to consider here is that in the majority of places these Black Panthers are reported, officially speaking, there supposedly aren't any mountain lions at all, much less black ones. And this goes over like a lead balloon to virtually everyone who lives in the countryside or wooded areas in the eastern United States, because sightings of mountain lions are very commonplace regardless of what the DNR or other organizations claim. Supposedly, mountain lions are limited to the western United States, except for a rare pocket of Florida panthers, eastern mountain lions are altogether extinct. In my humble opinion, that's genuinely the most blatantly inaccurate statement I could imagine as far as wildlife goes. Where I live, it's not even particularly uncommon to see them, even just within my own circle of immediate family, and not even including friends, neighbors, and others in the community I know of. Go online and you'll see this is the case across the eastern United States, where they are said to be non-existent, and you'll come across plenty of definitive and unarguable photos of them wandering through backyards or pastures or slinking by a trail cam. According to researchers, though, these individual animals are just passing through on their way back to a region it's acceptable for them to be in. Supposedly, they are just lone males or some such, and there certainly isn't any established breeding populations of them. Yes, they have huge territories spanning many miles and are rare to find, but not all these people are seeing the same animal repeatedly for years, and even if they are just wandering around, there clearly is enough of them hanging around long enough to be sighted relatively often. As far as I'm concerned, I consider that the same as there being a population of eastern mountain lions. And as for there not being a breeding population, that is also allegedly inaccurate, as there are plenty of reports and even photos of mothers with young. Let's face it, a Florida panther isn't going to step across an invisible state line and think, "Oh no, I have to turn back now." They will go wherever they want as they please, and there is no reason they can't live farther north when there isn't a tremendous supply of deer, rabbit, and other wild game, and even occasional livestock for them to prey on and sustain a small population with. But officially speaking, yes, the eastern mountain lion was declared extinct in 2018, and according to the U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife, was last verified in 1928. There are, of course, the standard mountain lions of the western United States, which it's been debated if eastern and standard mountain lions are any different at all technically, but regardless, it's not unreasonable to assume some of them come east, which to many people is the same as saying there are in fact eastern mountain lions. So it does seem pretty obvious that to some extent at least, there are mountain lions in places they aren't supposed to be, despite what experts may say. Which really makes a person think twice about some of these same experts' other claims. Is it really completely impossible for a mountain lion to be dark or black, or is it just a slight chance? Is it absolutely out of the question that one of these black panthers could reproduce and pass on its oddball genetics, or once again, just a small chance? If even just one was ever born and passed on its genes despite the odds, would that offspring have a higher chance than its parent of passing on those genetics again, continuing over generations? I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in animal genetics, but these seem like worthy questions to consider. The question has been raised of the possibility of a hybrid crossbreed of a black leopard or black jaguar reproducing with a mountain lion, resulting in darker colored offspring. The possible answers to this are complicated to say the least. Although hybrid animals and perhaps especially hybrid big cats are fairly commonplace, such as ligers, the actual genetics at play are a spider web of complexity. Cheetahs, for example, are unable to breed with any other cats due to their genetic isolation, and the biological compatibility varies greatly between each individual species of cats. It is said that a jaguar cannot successfully mate with a mountain lion due to these differences. So, assuming that's true, what about leopards and other cats? Mountain lions have been documented on very rare occasions to reproduce with leopards and ocelots. With leopards, it can only occur in captivity due to the geographic location. And due to size and behavioral differences, it also is far more likely to happen successfully in captivity with ocelots too. However, ocelots are found as far north as the southwest United States, and mountain lions are also in Mexico. So technically, there is some territory overlapping here, making a wild crossbreed unlikely but not impossible. Now, considering that ocelots can be black, this again raises questions about the complex genetics that may or may not allow for a mountain lion and ocelot crossbreed to carry the necessary genes. Even if a crossbreed occurred in the wild, there are many other circumstances at play that potentially make it incredibly difficult to believe this is happening often enough to account for all of the reported sightings. To circle back to leopards, which do carry the genes for melanism, could a few escaped pets or zoo animals be crossbreeding with native cougars? While this is, of course, not particularly likely, considering Florida's tremendous issue with black market exotic animals being imported into the country, and in addition to this, a huge amount of escaped or released invasive species quite literally taking over and destroying the local ecosystem, this may be a bit more likely than it seems on the surface. Due to Florida's unique climate and environment, it makes adapting to and even thriving easy for many invasive species that have made themselves right at home there. Could a small population of escaped leopards have begun breeding with the local established panther population, creating melanistic offspring? Or could simply black jaguars, which are surprisingly cold-tolerant, have blended into the ecosystem and begun spreading north? Neither of these scenarios are all that likely. However, it may explain some sightings. An issue with the hybrid theory is that many animal hybrids, although technically possible, have trouble making it to full-term pregnancy and birth without significant complications. Even after being born, it's not uncommon for the offspring to die rather quickly or not reach adulthood due to poor natural health. White tigers, for example, are often born with deformities and have short lifespans due to a tiny gene pool and intentional inbreeding for profit by humans. Naturally, only about 1 in every 10,000 tigers will be born white due to their genetic mutation. However, humans seeking to exploit the worth of these rare animals ignore the torment of illness the animals often live with. In the wild, a hybrid animal born with genetic mutations would have to endure against Mother Nature's harsh natural selection in order to reach adulthood despite any health defects and without any help from veterinarians. Even when healthy individuals are born and successfully reach maturity, another factor is that oftentimes hybrids are infertile and completely unable to reproduce whatsoever, and are only able to do so in extremely rare instances under very specific circumstances. And hybrids are just very complicated. For instance, ligers and tigons both have a lion and tiger parent, and yet, depending on which was the father and which was the mother, the resulting offspring are astoundingly different. Even the gender of the hybrid can influence if it will be capable of producing offspring or not. So needless to say, there are a lot of factors being juggled in hybrid animals, and in the case of a mountain lion hybrid, the odds are not in favor of supporting this theory beyond perhaps occasional rare instances. The idea of a small population of hybrids that just so happen to be melanistic, at least fairly often, is certainly a stretch, although perhaps not completely out of the question. One last explanation I've come across online is that people are actually seeing a jaguarundi, a cat most Americans have never heard of and are even less likely to recognize if they saw it. Jaguarundi, meaning dark jaguar, is a small wild cat most common in South America, although their range does also go into northern Mexico and the southwest United States. Researchers believe they were introduced to Florida illegally in the early 1900s, and unconfirmed sightings have been reported in Alabama and a few other states. Fossil records and documentation suggest that the jaguarundi, as well as ocelots, historically had a much wider range throughout the United States than they officially are said to today. Regular jaguars even at one time were as far north as Washington State and Pennsylvania, and with them in Louisiana as late as at least the 1800s. Jaguars are easily cold tolerant. However, jaguarundis are not known to be able to resist and withstand low temperatures. If people are mistaking them for black panthers in some cases, then it would be limited to warm climates like Florida in the southwest. Despite having some similarities in body shape, build, and proportions, there also is the glaring issue of the huge size difference between a mountain lion, which people report the black panther as being, and a jaguarundi. Mountain lions average around 170 pounds, with males reaching 7 feet 10 inches from nose to tip of tail, with the largest ever recorded weighing in at 276 pounds. Even the smallest females are thought to never be under 73 pounds in adulthood. Compared to the jaguarundi's weight hovering around 15 pounds, it's hard to imagine anyone mistaking the two, but an inexperienced person unfamiliar with either animal, especially if only catching a brief look in poor lighting or obstructed by heavy brush, may easily misjudge the size of what they saw. But again, this only really would account for perhaps a handful of sightings every year given the climate jaguarundis are limited to. And it also does not explain experienced hunters and outdoorsy people familiar with wildlife feeling entirely positive and confident that what they saw was a large black panther. Let's travel across the pond to the UK, where for hundreds of years people have been eyewitness to a black panther. While historically speaking big cats, including types of leopards, had previously been found across Europe, in the modern age they are thought to be both extinct or unfortunately eradicated from much of their original range. Despite this, people have continued to report seeing a large cat in the countryside across the UK, specifically a black panther. The Black Beast of Exmoor is a popular big cat cryptid in Britain, and what's referred to as alien big cats, meaning escaped or released large cats that have survived and potentially started a small population in the UK. This was all considered hogwash nonsense by scientists and many civilians, but in 2024, a woman witnessed what she described as a black leopard or black panther feeding on a sheep it had apparently killed. Without having any footage as proof, this would have been dismissed and ignored, except that she allowed researchers to collect DNA from the scene. The DNA showed a positive match for a member of the Panthera genus, meaning one of the big cat species such as jaguar, leopard, tiger, etc. had indeed killed and fed on the sheep just as the witness reported, proving once and for all that, like it or not, there is in fact at least one non-native big cat prowling the UK that has apparently successfully adapted. And if there's one, it's likely there is more and perhaps an established population with growing numbers. While some believe these black panthers could be an Ice Age relic hiding under our noses, most assume these are imported animals with the potential to be creating hybrids. This would be reasonable considering jaguars and leopards, which people typically report the black panther of the UK as looking like, can successfully breed together, and both carry the melanistic gene. This discovery is groundbreaking not just in terms of validating eyewitness testimony and reports spanning countless years, but also for validating cryptozoology at large. Make no mistake, this very much was a cryptid that was proven real. Of course, some naysayers will argue that a population of exotic wildlife surviving somewhere it shouldn't isn't the same as a real cryptid, or that it still doesn't mean there is black panthers in the UK or elsewhere just because some are living in the wild there. But that is like saying Florida doesn't have pythons just because they aren't native to Florida, when in fact, as an invasive species, they have established a huge population there. The same would apply elsewhere and for different circumstances. Nobody cares where they came from or how they originally got there. The point is that it is now confirmed that there are big cats roaming the UK, despite skeptics being certain it was impossible. Could the same be true of some of the Black Panther sightings in America? If anything stands out here, it's that the experts aren't always right. Such was the case with the alien big cats in the UK and the melanistic lynx that had been sighted before plenty of times but wasn't acknowledged until a researcher happened to caption a video recently. The same was true of melanistic bobcats as well. Even after being confirmed, there is, to date, less than 20 documented and confirmed cases. Of course, there is more than that out there in the wild that may never even be seen by a person, much less officially confirmed. And no matter which way you look at it, it is undeniably very interesting that melanism exists in countless animal species, including big cats, yet it's puzzling that mountain lions are somehow the one exception. It's something to think about too that every species was at some point in time nothing more than a cryptid. Komodo dragons, gorillas, kangaroos, to name just a few, all have a rich history of being considered myths, legends, and folklore, with no truth or scientific credibility until a specimen was finally cataloged. Now all these species are household names and commonplace in zoos worldwide. Compared to most cryptids or even compared to some known animals such as the bizarre platypus, a black mountain lion actually seems like a mundane and ordinary creature that you could see in your own backyard. But what do you think about these theories? Have you ever seen a black panther? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you next time at the Crow's Nest.